We are good to go. Hello and welcome. My name is Molly Wolf. I am the Executive Director of the Wolf Graham Memorial Library.
And I'm Jill Boren. I'm the head of archives and resistive collections and a librarian at Widener as well.
And this is AI, Ethics, and Equity, Who Wins and Who Loses. So generative AI is what we are all talking about all the time, every day, everywhere, all at once. And we are coming off of the heels of a very successful AI day, where we got to see all of the neat stuff that AI can do. But as information professionals, we always look at new technology or new information tools with a critical eye. So while AI is the shiny new tool that everybody wants to play with, we need to take just a little step back and look at it critically to see what's going on behind the scenes. Where is it coming from? Who is it impacting? How is it impacting all of us? Things like that. So what we want to do today is look at AI, which is both a tool for progress and a potential source of harm. AI has the potential to enhance access to essential resources and increase efficiency, improve accessibility for people with disabilities, for people who speak other languages. It has the potential to do some great things. AI also poses some significant risks, such as reinforcing biases, enabling mass surveillance, spreading misinformation through AI, through confabulations, which are also known as hallucinations, and deepfakes. There are real concerns about the environmental impact of AI, as well as concerns about the exploitation of workers in AI development. And as AI continues to evolve, balancing its benefits with ethical considerations is crucial to ensuring it advances humanity and education rather than exacerbating inequalities. So let's talk about some of the positive impacts, some of the things that AI can do really well and that AI can help people with. So I said, I love puns. I'm sorry, I'm a librarian. I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm a word person. But AI is really great with assisting with executive functioning tasks. So I like to think of it as an AI executive functioning assistant. Ha 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 ha. You don't have to laugh, it's fun. So AI has the potential to enhance access to resources and increase efficiency and improve accessibility for people with disabilities. In addition, chatbots and automated systems can improve support for people in multiple languages 24/7 without the need to hire interpreters or to staff a service point or staff a helpline, right? It can do all of that without human intervention. AI is great at summarizing lengthy documents, making technical jargon or scientific language digestible and easy to understand for the layperson or for someone just entering into the field. It can help people who struggle with executive functioning with those executive functioning tasks. So making schedules, breaking things down into smaller digestible pieces, helping to organize information, making outlines. It can also be used for tasks like document review, predictive analysis, case prioritization, identifying gaps in the literature or in your data, and freeing up humans to do tasks that humans are really good at, which is relating to people and working with people. From my own experience, I will say that I have used AI to identify the gaps in our data or in our coverage of information. So the library maintains an FAQ, a frequently asked questions set. And I knew that we were missing some things. So instead of having a staff member go through the data, categorize it, identify the gaps, and then answer those questions, I put those into ChatGPT. And in about, I don't know, 4 seconds or something like that, it was able to categorize our FAQs. Now I have content expertise here, so I could look at the categories and go, yeah, that actually makes sense. Those look like good categories. And then I could have it identify the gaps. What are we missing? And it did that in about another 4 seconds. And then once we had gaps identified, then I went to the staff members in the library and said, okay, this is what AI is saying we're missing. Can you personalize these into questions that our students or faculty would ask and provide answers that make sense to our library and not just a library in general? And I estimate that saved us probably 3 working days. And it happened, it brought the whole process down to maybe an hour. So great for productivity tools. Okay, so as I've mentioned a couple of times, AI can do some great things for improving accessibility of information to people with disabilities. So AI-driven assistive technologies, so things like speech to text, automated captioning. So once we have recorded this Zoom, I'm going to put it into Canvas Studio, and I'm going to have Canvas Studio generate the closed captions for me. Now, I'm going to have to go back and I'm going to have to edit them because sometimes I don't always enunciate the way I should. And so the AI is going to make an assumption that I said a word I didn't say. But having to tweak the AI generated captions saves a whole, I can't even imagine how many hours over having to generate those captions myself. Not only the automated captions, but AI-powered sign language translation, other language translation that we would have to get a person in order to translate. AI can do that to a reasonable degree. It's not so great with nuances and slang and language, but certainly better than not having something translated at all. And all of these services can make your information or make your work more accessible to people either with disabilities or people who do not speak your native language. And again, things like making technical information digestible. So for people who have difficulty with visual processing, reading the whole document may be too much for them. Having AI break it up into smaller, more digestible chunks can certainly help with those kind of things.
So Molly has laid out a lot of, or some of the potential positives and benefits that AI brings. But of course, a well-balanced presentation has to present the risks and problems. And there are many. Two of the problems that I'm going to be discussing are bias and discrimination. As AI chatbots reflect the biases that are embedded in our modern society, as humans are responsible for feeding the data into AI, AI models will naturally inherit and amplify biases presented in training data. This leads to discriminatory outcomes in hiring, policing, loan approvals, medical treatment, medical research, higher education, any education, and many other fields, which you will see in our slides. So it's like a garbage in, garbage out scenario. Biased information in equals biased information out. And therefore, people are making decisions based upon conclusions given from AI, which in turn contains biases. Remember, AI is not a search engine. It learns from and makes assumptions from the information that it receives. When this data contains biases, it will repeat these biases. Bias at each stage of model development can occur due to machine factors, human factors, or a combination of both. Bias at one stage can be propagated to other stages. Therefore, efforts to detect and mitigate bias should be done at each stage. So an example from a British radiology journal demonstrates how unconscious bias limits the kind of data collection, so the conclusions from that data will then provide limited conclusions because it's a limited pool. So an investigation of bystander CPR response for witnessed cardiac arrest found that Black and Hispanic patients or females are less likely to get CPR regardless of income level or the neighborhood where the cardiac arrest occurred. This means then that the patients would be excluded from an imaging study evaluating cardiac disease outcomes. So next slide, please. So this is a really great chart that shows you how biases infect each stage of the data. And this is from that same British radiology article. And the authors of this article conclude that allowing for more stakeholders and viewpoints throughout the AI development lifecycle, in this case, including patients and a variety of patients, patient advocacy groups, doctors, radiology technicians, researchers, and more, represents the best way to mitigate the amount of bias in the AI model. Next slide, please. In addition to bias, AI brings with it discrimination. AI platforms themselves introduce and exacerbate discrimination. The information I'm talking about here is going to refer to college students in higher education. Currently, the most robust AI tools are not freely available and are behind paywalls. As a result, students in higher education who lack access to these robust tools before college have poor information literacy skills. Therefore, they may not be able to determine what AI data is valid and what is faulty, which will, in turn, cause them to be further behind their more well-resourced peers and be more vulnerable to misinformation. Faulty AI data-driven decisions could prove costly for these students. Additionally, as most large language models are trained on data sets that primarily use standard American English, the AI output misses a great deal of cultural complexity. AI results often do not represent the depth and breadth of many students' multicultural and multilingual experiences.
Okay. So continuing on, some additional negative risks and impacts relate to privacy and intellectual property concerns. So everything you put into generative AI is used to train the AI. So your data, your writing, your intellectual property is ingested, and there's no getting it back out once it's in there. And although it seems like a secure environment, you put information in that is personally identifying, think social security numbers, student ID numbers, bank account numbers, things like that. It's being left open to being stolen, manipulated, shared in some way, shape, or form in the future. We are seeing more and more, and if you attended Christina's presentation earlier in the week, she went very into depth about copyright and AI, but we're seeing copyright concerns emerge. Much of the information that's used to train generative AI is being used without the consent of the creator or the copyright holder. As we've seen from the recent article in The Atlantic published on March 20th, Meta used thousands and thousands of pirated books to train its Llama 3 AI, including books written by Widener faculty. They did not consent to have their material included. They did not get copyright clearance to do that. Other AI creators have been less than forthcoming about where they get the information to train their AI. But I think it's pretty safe to say that they are not asking the permission of thousands of copyright holders. They're just taking that information and ingesting it. So along those same lines, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about misinformation and deepfakes. And this is both a more intense and lighter and funnier part of the presentation. So AI generated fake news, deepfake videos, and misinformation campaigns can undermine social justice issues, spread propaganda, distort public discourse, spread false information, and even be dangerous to the end user. So let's talk about deepfakes for a minute. What are deepfakes? So we've heard it a lot in the news, especially when we're talking about elections and politics, both in the United States and in other countries. Deepfakes are images, videos, audio that have been edited or generated using artificial intelligence or AI-based tools. We've seen them used in fun ways, right? So we probably have all seen the video. It's actually a video of an audio file, but it's Frank Sinatra singing Little John's From the Windows to the Walls. We've seen AI used to bring deceased celebrities back to life. You could have them sing a jingle in Dean Martin's voice, for example. So those are kind of fun. But we've also seen the same technology used to slander politicians in various ways that have then been picked up by legitimate media outlets and spread and propagated. And now we have a much more difficult time disentangling what is this deep fake and what is actually real information. And for people, as Jill had said, who may not have access to robust AI tools or good digital literacy, it is very, very difficult to tell what is real and what is fake because these tools are so sophisticated. Deep fakes are also used to create something called sock puppets or sock puppet accounts, which cracks me up that that's the term we went with, but here we are. So these are fake social media personas that then interact with real news sources and post information. And these are tools, essentially, these accounts are created to create and spread misinformation and perhaps even sway political opinions, election outcomes, things like that. One of the most disturbing ways deepfakes have been used and sock puppet accounts is to create AI revenge porn. So when AI has been used to create pornographic images of celebrities, generally female celebrities, and K-pop stars, that was called out in the literature specifically, or used in revenge porn between two regular people, not necessarily celebrities. Interestingly enough, this is seen as a big enough problem that Salazar's Act, or the Take It Down Act, which is a bipartisan act to make AI-generated revenge porn illegal and to require that social media platforms take it down in a certain amount of time, has just passed the Senate. So this is a real concern for a lot of people. So I'd be remiss if we didn't look at some misinformation examples here. So, and I will say that a lot of these come from Google's AI and Google's AI overview. But in the first example, we see someone asked how long ago was 1919, and it says 1919 was 20 years ago. That one's pretty easy to pick out that it is not, in fact, correct information, right? We know that 1919 wasn't 20 years ago. So that one's just kind of funny. The second example here, someone asks, can you use gasoline to cook spaghetti? And the AI says, no, you can't use AI to cook, you can't use gasoline to cook spaghetti, but you can use gasoline to make a spicy spaghetti dish. So I would hope that someone reading that answer isn't going to add gasoline to their marinara to make it spicier. But if you are just learning English, maybe that could be confusing to someone. And ingesting gasoline would have dangerous consequences to your health. And some other examples where we get increasingly more dangerous, I think. Someone says, I'm feeling depressed, and the AI overview suggests jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. So we don't really want to encourage jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. So that's a pretty dangerous suggestion. And then what happens if you put more cooking oil on a grease fire? AI says it can help put it out. Which again, for a lot of us, this is common sense, but for someone who's new to cooking, doesn't understand, never been in this situation before, you know, this is not going to make the situation better. It's not going to put the fire out. It's going to make it much, much worse. So the misinformation ranges from laughable to incredibly dangerous.
So other forces, other negative impacts and risks caused by AI are exploitation. Now, scholars talk about the potential for AI to help environmental concerns by identifying ways to use more clean energy and ways towards better conservation. But the process of creating AI itself, unfortunately, leads to a lot of exploitation of the environment and of the labor used to produce AI. Currently, water and electricity are the two main resources necessary for the operation of the large data centers that feed AI development. These centers are built in lower resourced areas, such as what this article refers to as the Global South, where land and construction costs are much cheaper as are labor costs. As a result of climate change, though, these areas happen to be areas that are highly plagued by drought and power shortages and blackouts. Yet the profit incentive often overrides these environmental concerns. In Uruguay, for example, which was already experiencing severe water shortage, a proposed data center would pull 2 million gallons of water every day from the public drinking water system to cool its servers. The clearances were approved, and the clearances were approved to build this data center despite those concerns. So at the same time, authorities approved the doubling of the amount of sodium chloride in tap water. This then prompted advisories to restrict the use of tap water in preparing baby food and being used by women who are pregnant and people who have cardiovascular and other serious medical problems. So this is all happening at the same time, which is very concerning. Additionally, there's a lot of labor exploitation. AI technology heavily depends upon labor-intensive contributions of workforce located in various regions of the Global South, and this workplace faces many forms of exploitation. In addition to suffering from low wages and poor working conditions, this workforce also faces risks to their mental health. The learning models must be trained to identify toxic, degrading, violent, and racist content. The models only learns those things through data labelers, which requires humans to manually code massive amounts of this type of content. This data labeling process requires constant exposure to truly disturbing text, visuals, and videos that has led to mental scarring of the data labelers. These extremely low-wage workers in the global South bear the mental and emotional burden of making AI safe and non-toxic for users in the global North. Next slide, please. So now we are at the opportunity to do some hands-on exploration. Molly, do you want to describe what they need to do?
So yesterday, Jill sent all attendees an email asking you to be familiar with or to set up an account in either ChatGPT, Google's Gemini, or Copilot. And so what we want you to do, this is an exercise in exploring bias. One of the things that is so challenging as an information professional who teaches people how to evaluate the information sources that they're using is that with AI, it's often hard to replicate your results, right? You ask it a question today, and you ask it the same question tomorrow, you don't always get the same results. So it's very interesting. And we think that generating images is an easy way to illustrate this or not. So what we want you to do is to go into your AI of choice. Doesn't matter whether it's ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini. And we want you to ask it to create 5 different pictures. A picture of a millionaire, a picture of a welfare recipient, a picture of a parent, a picture of a family, and a picture of an Olympic athlete.
And then we want you to come back and we'll discuss what results everybody found.
Right.
Hopefully it'll be interesting.
And Jill and I have done this several times and it never creates the same image twice. So we really have no idea what you're going to get, which is what makes this so interesting. And I think we'll have a really robust conversation afterward about what you're seeing in the images it generated. So why don't you take about, let's say, 7 minutes? You probably have more time if needed. But we'll leave this up here. We'll leave the screen up here so you have the prompts to go back to if you need a reminder or a refresher.
For anyone who just joined, everyone is going to their AI platform of choice and generating a picture following these 5 prompts. And there's a question in the chat. If people want to upload their images to the chat, please go ahead and do so.
These are some great images coming into the chat. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, these are fantastic.
It is interesting. Some people are saying that that Copilot is not generating certain images because it reinforce stereotypes.
And, something that Molly and I discovered in our research was that a lot of the published research, especially in scholarly peer-reviewed journals, is based on use of former AI platforms, not the most recent platforms. So perhaps the bias has been mitigated a bit in these newer platforms, which is a good thing. We're done. The time is done. So it seems like a lot of people have generated some really great things. Does anybody want to unmute themselves and discuss what they found and how they felt about this exercise?
Well, of course I will. I just discovered I've used ChatGPT for basically like a thesaurus over the last year. Didn't know that it could actually do images. I did a couple charts the other night, but I could not believe how mine, at least, which is an older platform, I would think one of the more original ones, perhaps. Don't quote me on that, but I was pretty astounded by those first images that I put up of how biased those images seem to be. Not totally, but just kind of like iconically biased. I mean, am I wrong here? What do you guys think? I found this to be very interesting. First of all, the beginning of your presentation also brought up a lot of good points. I'm trying to figure out the basis of these platforms as well, how the information is learned, where it comes from, copyright laws, all that stuff. So I just found it very interesting.
Thank you.
Well, I will say, looking at the pictures that are shared in the chat, and of course, not everybody is sharing every picture they generated, but every millionaire is male. I will say that.
White.
Yeah, I was gonna say all my people were white, every
Yeah.
picture.
That's indeed what we discovered when we did these exercises. So it is interesting that that is occurring for you as well.
I didn't send mine over, but anyway, for a millionaire, I got 5 people, 3 fake men, 2 fake women, of all kinds of racial groups and all painfully thin. And for an Olympic athlete, so I asked for a millionaire and got 5. An Olympic athlete, I got a crowd. For a family, I got sort of either 2 families or kind of an extra large family with a couple of parents of each gender. And it was just very interesting, but it all took a lot of time, and I could see the computers somewhere stretching the limits to try and create these unnecessary photos.
I guess we're gonna have to calculate the environmental impact of this session, this particular activity, and go plant some trees somewhere. Anybody else want to weigh in on what they noticed when they were generating their images? What was included, what wasn't included? Choices made by the AI.
I was using Copilot and I got definitely some of the stereotypes from Millionaire, but I was impressed that it refused to do the welfare recipient. I was impressed that the family pictures definitely obviously incorporated multi-generations, multi-gender, and different ethnicities, I feel like you can tell that they're at least trying to not be too stereotypical in some fashions.
I think Roz's point though is that is interesting too though that even in like the very cartoonish ones, everyone is thin.
Well, yes.
I was having a conversation during AI Day with a group talking about how there is a beauty bias in the AI generated images. Everyone is absolutely gorgeous. There's nothing beyond like below supermodel in all of the generated human-like images.
The ultimate filter.
That's a very good point. And, it's backed up by a lot of research, which indicates that these biased images come out despite the fact that they do not reflect reality. For example, this article about medical students in Australia, 50% of medical students in Australia are female and are diverse. And the images repeatedly showed white men and did not reflect the reality of both medical students in Australia and the United States and United Kingdom. So it reinforces stereotypes that are not real and do not reflect current populations. Anyone else have a comment or a question or a reflection? These are all so valuable.
I mean, this is, and I just want to end with, this is not to say that AI is bad or that AI is good. This is a realistic look at current limitations or current issues to consider when using AI or consuming the information that it generates. These are the same kind of questions, same kind of issues that we have with other information sources. It's just that we are better equipped to handle them with other information sources because they've been around longer. Whereas AI is not emerging, it's here, but it is evolving and changing so rapidly that the tests or the techniques that we've used or the issues that we think about when we consume the information has to be constantly updated and revised and changed. And I think as humans, we all have, we want to play with the shiny new toy, and there's nothing wrong with that. I like to play with the shiny new toy too. But we have to do it in a thoughtful, critical way. Because once the information is in there, it then spits it back out and then it propagates, and it's going to be very, very hard to disentangle what's real, what's a confabulation or a hallucination going forward. And just to bring it back to the higher education part, because that's why we're all here, this next generation of students has different information consumption habits than information seeking habits, and their information seeking habits leave them somewhat vulnerable to the misinformation that AI has the potential to create. So, is it bad? No. Should we use it? Sure. But we need to think about what it is we're using and use it in a critical, intentional way.
And to conclude, if you look at our reference slides, it was very interesting doing the research for this presentation that articles about this topic and research done on this topic are very varied and come from lots of different disciplines. So it's very interesting and beneficial to see how different disciplines are communicating about AI.
And this represents some of the information we use, not all. So if you're interested, we're happy to share reference lists and our reading lists with other people. There's a ton of good information emerging on AI. And we're happy to share that with all of you. We want to be mindful of everybody's time, and people probably have classes to get to. So Jill and I can hang around for the next couple of minutes and answer any questions that anybody has. But if not, thank you so much for coming, and we hope you have a great day. Consume AI ethically.
I think you can start recording, Molly.